What is the annual income in Silicon Valley?
We actually generated about $500 million a year on education programs around the world. No one ever thought anything would happen to Sun Microsystems. We were at the top of our game. We were valued at $155 billion. 2008, our valuation went down to like $76 billion.
Can you describe me how corporations leading great companies die? Привет, дорогие друзья, это новый Федери влог, и сегодня у нас в гостях из Сан-Франциско Келли Палмер. Келли – автор книги, которая называется «Expertise Economy», про экономику будущего и про образование будущего. Но, кроме того, Келли сделала карьеру мечты, потому что она была в руководстве таких компаний, как Sun Microsystems, Yahoo и LinkedIn. Сегодня мы будем говорить с ней о обучении, образовании, будущем работы, о работе будущего, об организациях будущего и о том, как руководителям организаций учиться самим, учить своих людей и формировать правильную, ненавижу это выражение, корпоративную культуру. Kelly, when we speak about corporations, it's a saying that nothing personal. I love personal stories. Can we start from your personal story? Because you have a great career. What's behind it?
I live in San Francisco, and I've actually been in Silicon Valley my whole career. I spent many, many years at Sun Microsystems, and I actually started out in product development, and then I moved into corporate strategy at Sun Microsystems.
In Sun Microsystems.
And I had what I like to call a midlife career crisis. I didn't feel like I was having as much impact on the world as I wanted to have. I actually took a step back and I did some soul searching about what I was really passionate about.
And as I understand, you were in good position, properly paid. So
absolutely.
That means everything was super fine.
No, I was actually, an executive in both of those positions, and I was a senior director in corporate strategy.
Can I ask politically, or incorrect question? This type of a person, what is the annual income in Silicon Valley?
I would say it's around the $175,000 range, probably.
Pretty much enough.
Enough.
Yes.
Yes. And at first I thought, well, maybe I don't even want to be in tech. Maybe what I want to do is go into nonprofit, because I had this thought that if you really wanted to have impact in the world, that you had to maybe go into nonprofit. I found out since that that's not true. And it so happened that Sun was going through a transformation, and we decided to bring together all of our learning organizations from around the company into one group. And then there was an opportunity for an executive position in learning. I ended up getting the job, and as a result, I actually said, okay, this is where I want to be. I actually went back to school and I got my master's in education technology and adult learning theory. At Sun Microsystems, we actually had a business around learning. We actually generated about $500 million a year on education programs around the world. So we were the inventors of Java. We also had a lot of technology, and we would provide consulting services and learning and training services around the world.
Sun Microsystems finished as a company, as I understand.
It is finished as a company.
You were inside this ship when the crash happened. Can you describe me how corporations leading great companies die?
I was there when Sun was one of the tech giants that no one ever thought anything would happen to Sun Microsystems. We were competing against Microsoft and HP and IBM, and we were at the top of our game, maybe a little arrogant too. We used to have a slogan at Sun that we were the dot in the .com. All the .com companies ran their companies using Sun Microsystems servers and workstations and software, right? So So in addition to all the .com companies, it was all the companies, right? So financial institutions, airlines, everybody was using Sun Microsystems to run their business. So that's why we were so confident and arrogant. So the .com bust happened, and so many companies went out of business. That impacted what we were doing. So when I started at Sun, we were 8,000 employees. And when I left Sun, which was in 2010, when it finished, there was around 45,000 employees. Right.
And you spent there how many
20 years.
20 years.
20 years, yes.
Two questions. How you personally felt that, oh wow, shit happening?
I remember specifically times in the company where the people who knew, who felt it, who knew something, if we didn't change, if we didn't reinvent ourselves, if we didn't do something different, we were telling our colleagues, look, we can't keep doing these things the same way. A huge number of the people in the company just didn't want to change or didn't believe that we had to change. And so that went on for a long time. I mean,
in what group were you?
This was, I think, my transition from product development. I was in corporate strategy at that point. And then in 2006 to 2010, that's when I moved into the corporate education group. Interestingly enough, I think in that experience in corporate education, we were able to do some really amazing, innovative things, but kind of in a bubble of that, we had customers, we were generating revenue. It was kind of a different business, while a lot of pieces of the business were tanking, not going so well. I think at one point we were valued at $155 billion. And then in around 2008 went down to our valuation went down to like 76 billion. In 2010, Oracle ended up buying us for $7.6 billion. So that's the dramatic change. There came a point
20 times. Do you have any advice, like an executive,
yes,
for leaders of the companies which are entering a crisis zone when they see that it's, let's call it, bad times?
You can't ignore the market and what's happening around you. And what we found was our competitors weren't really thinking that way. They were going after new market opportunities. They were innovating. So the advice would be is to not be complacent, take some decisions, decide, even if it's wrong, because look at what happened. If you do nothing, you're almost guaranteed to fail. So interesting, you mentioned Facebook and you mentioned the old campus. So the story I tell in the book is that campus that used to belong to Sun, after Oracle bought Sun, got taken over by Facebook. Facebook bought it, they redesigned it, but they kept the Sun logo on the backside of the Facebook logo.
And they always say it's to remember, it's for our employees leaving the office to remember that shit can happen and we should be active, awake.
That's exactly right.
How you left?
Right. So Oracle bought Sun, and I don't know if you know much about Oracle's culture or Sun's culture, but they were very different cultures. So Sun was a very collaborative, collegial, a lot of what you think about when you think about Facebook and Google and all of that. I didn't think that the Oracle culture was a good fit. I didn't want to go work.
What was the culture of Oracle?
Their culture is more of, it's all about money and it's all about the bottom line, and people are secondary, so it's...
Can I ask a question on the side? How you define the term corporate culture?
I think its highest, simplest form, it's the values that you state that you believe in and how you operate on a day-to-day and how you treat each other as employees along the way. That's the corporate culture. So I'll give you an example. Microsoft was very much known for kind of a cutthroat competitive culture, meaning employees would compete against each other, and that was encouraged. It meant that the leadership at Microsoft felt like that was the best way to get productivity and results, and they would often pit teams against each other.
Do you think that internal competition is bad for the company?
I think it depends on how you position it. Even at Sun, we had some internal competition, but it wasn't at the expense of your colleagues. Kind of the no asshole rule, if you excuse the language. We don't want brilliant jerks at our company. So a brilliant jerk is somebody who is arrogant, thinks they know everything, and feels entitled to treat their fellow employees in a bad way.
When I speak about values, for example, during the seminars, I always say that values it's when you lose money. What I mean by that? When you say no to money, you can earn, but you save your self-respect. Due to you do what the things you believe are good and right. This is values. This means how to build a strong corporate culture, inspire executives to start losing money.
After I left Sun, I didn't go with the Oracle acquisition. I went to Yahoo. I stayed there for 2 years. The culture had some issues for a variety of reasons. We can go into it if you like, but where I wanted to jump to was LinkedIn. I was there for 4 years to start as their CLO and to start a learning organization from the ground up. There I saw how Jeff Weiner, our CEO, he sat down with the co-founder Reid Hoffman and they decided as a startup, what did they want this company to be, and how did they want people to act? But then it wasn't about posters on the wall. It was actually hiring people who shared those same values. And what I was amazed at my time at LinkedIn is that it was both a culture that was from the top down, our exec chairman, our CEO, the executive team, all talking the same language, but modeling the behavior that they wanted the company to be. And then in turn, that trickled down to all the employees. And I've never seen a stronger culture than my time at LinkedIn until I got to Degreed, where I'm at now. All the companies that have a strong culture or a defined culture, they had a CEO or a founder that actually put a lot of thought into what they wanted the company to be. Transpire at the very beginning, right before they actually grew into something really big. And where I've seen companies not do so well is that they wait and they're pretty big and then they bring a consultant in and they do a card sort and say, which values are most important?
Do you think it's a founder's job or it's a CEO job?
Well,
when you say that it's wrong to call a consultant for that.
I mean, I didn't say it was, I'm not sure it's so strong as it's wrong. I just think it's less passionate and less personal when you have to do it after the fact. If you have some ideas and you're having a hard time articulating that and you bring a consultant in to help you with that.
I totally agree on that. My point is that it's definitely a founder's job. And what I say, it's a very big difference between leader with the vision and the moderator. If leader has no vision, it's a moderator.
Right.
It's a facilitator,
yes,
maybe.
And I agree with you.
Different.
Yeah, I agree with you for the most part, although I would say in the LinkedIn example, it was Reid, the founder, and Jeff, the CEO, that kind of work together on that, which I think can work. So it's not, you were saying it's either the founder or the CEO. Usually, I think in that case it was two. In the case of Degreed, definitely the founder, who was also the CEO.
Do you remember any story in LinkedIn, for example, when a person with a great performance was fired due to the wrong values?
Absolutely. I mean, many, both at Sun and at LinkedIn, because that was something that was important at both of those companies. I remember sitting in one of these meetings where somebody was saying how brilliant this person was and actually personally saying, but that guy is a jerk and nobody wants to work with him. So if those are our values, how can you say that that's a top performer? That guy ended up getting fired.
Question number 1. How can you scan the organizations for assholes?
The guy that I just mentioned didn't get fired right then. It was like, it's a manager's responsibility to give that guy some feedback and say, look, people are having a hard time working with you. Yes, you may be brilliant, but if you can't collaborate and get along with your employees, or if you insult people, or if you are arrogant, that's not going to work here. Give them an opportunity to actually change.
How long is the period you give for a trial?
I think it's not very long. I think you give them, maybe 3 months, maybe.
Maybe, but maybe less.
Maybe less. This is the other thing that I love about Jeff Weiner. I really liked him as a CEO. He said that it's more compassionate to tell people, if that's the way you work best, maybe this culture or maybe this company isn't the right place for you. The problem is that most managers hate giving that feedback. They love to give great feedback. Oh, you're doing a great job. You really crushed it and killed it here, but
why people don't like to be negative?
Because they're afraid of the reaction, and they're also not quite sure how to approach the subject in a way that will be okay. That kind of information.
What is your personal advice how to do that?
Personally, what I do as a leader is I try to have regular conversations with people, good, bad, or constructive, and that way those conversations don't seem so scary, right? Because what happens is a lot of times managers will wait. And they'll say they don't give any feedback. And then it comes to a point where they need to have that conversation and it's really scary.
I think you have a priceless experience working at least in 3 companies, not talking about the current one. If you compare these 3 companies in means of culture and learning, what is the key differences which made 2 unsuccessful and LinkedIn so fast?
From my perspective, one of the things that made LinkedIn really successful is attitude about entrepreneurship and continuous learning. I remember telling new hires when they would come into LinkedIn, it's like, we have this idea that whether you stay at LinkedIn for 1 year or 10 years, we want you to have the most amazing employee experience of your life. We explicitly tell them this. We're going to help you build skills that you can take with you for the rest of your career. So that's our promise to you. And in exchange for that, while you're at LinkedIn, we want you to give your 110%. Your focus, that's our contract.
That's the deal.
That's the deal, right? I can't tell you how many companies or leaders at companies that I've talked to that said, well, why should we invest in our employees? We're going to teach them all these skills and they're going to take them to the competition. And then we're gonna lose out. So why should I even invest in that? And to me, that's so short-sighted. And I think that more and more companies realize that learning and your talent can be your competitive advantage.
What do you mean by keeping the entrepreneurial culture inside the corporation and how to do it?
It comes back to the value of acting like an owner. Like when I was running the learning organization, if I see somebody that's trying to put these heavyweight processes in one of the organizations I'm working with and I know it's against what we're trying to be as a company, I need to say something. That's what it means. It means you don't just sit back and go, oh, that group over there is starting to be very bureaucratic or hard to work with or whatever. I'm the leader of maybe just the learning organization, but I have as much responsibility. So
you mean that your opinion is not an option, it's an obligation.
That's right.
What is the future of work? How you see it? Because if you are in learning, it's about the work and the way people work. How you see it develops and what will be in 5-10 years and how organizations have to be prepared for that.
Enough. I mean, one of the other reasons I joined Degreed is that
Can you tell a few words?
Yes,
what is
I'll tell you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Degreed is an education technology platform, and we actually created our own category of technology, one that didn't exist before. This idea about Degreed is, first of all, to help people realize, broaden their definition of learning and realize that learning is everywhere and it's not just what you do in a classroom, but it can also be the books that you read and the podcasts you listen to and the articles that you read or events that you attend. This video right now is part of your learning.
It's great learning, I would say.
It's a great learning, but imagine that you could track all of that learning that you're doing to see all of the learning that you're doing. So that I started my Degreed profile when I was with LinkedIn, and then when I came to Degreed, I took that with me. I took all the learning that I had done there and I brought it with me, and so my profile goes wherever I go. This idea that you could tie learning to specific skills that you're building is the next part of the journey. So in our platform, you can actually tie curated content, learning content to skills that you're building. You can see that and you can use data and analytics either on a personal level to see what skills you're building, what you're learning, but also from an organizational level, like you could see at your company all the skills that your people have. So that's kind of the vision of Degreed, is learning, building skills, and then connecting people to projects and opportunities. The reason why I wanted to explain that first is that a lot of companies are talking about how do they change their learning strategy, but I don't think that you can talk about that unless you actually look at what the future of work is really going to be, because you'll be building skills for a world that no longer exists. So the future of work, I think, it's going to be a lot more about people, having skills as a currency, but then having different projects and experiences that they go on. When you talked about your work culture and you don't care about what time people come to work, I mean, that's the future of work, where people shouldn't care that you're coming to a physical office. Degreed, for example, is a remote company. Most people work from wherever they want. We have some physical offices and you can go in there, and we have certain times where we meet as an organization, but actually the LinkedIn 2020 emerging jobs report talks about how if you want to attract people, one of the biggest things that they want to know is whether they can work, whether they have a flexible work environment, and whether they can work remotely, because that's part of the future of work.
Can you teach values? Can you learn values?
I think you can. In fact, I had so say for example, one of the values at LinkedIn and at Degreed is empathy. It's an interesting value and skill. And the reason, think about this. So as automation and technology take over more and more, like we know now that so many jobs are being automated. So when we think about skills for the future, the skills that become most important are those that are uniquely human. Last week I was with a company, a pharmaceutical company in Belgium, and they actually have classes on empathy or experience. I wouldn't even call it a class. Experiences which help drive empathy for the people in their company, so that when they go out, what they're doing is they're selling medical solutions or medication for people who have epilepsy or things like that. So creating empathy with that kind of a group is, maybe a little easier, but I saw really impactful experiences that would help teach their employees empathy. And then if you look in the tech community, empathy for your users or for your customers or for your fellow employees is really important too. So can you teach that? I believe you can. You might have different methods and models for how you do that, but I think the answer is yes.
Cool. What other examples like empathy? What are the unexpected skills you have to develop in people?
Communication and collaboration are skills that are going to be highly valued. They're highly valued now, but I think even more so
How you
in the
recommend to
future.
develop, for example, collaboration?
I have a philosophy that the learning experiences that you should create have to do with solving real work problems with your colleagues. And so if you're doing that, and if you're creating cohorts or groups of people that have to work together to solve real business problems, and you go through what I call the learning loop, we talk about it in the expertise economy, where you're actually practicing that skill, you're getting feedback on that skill, you're reflecting on that skill, and then you're kind of going in a loop. Peer-to-peer learning teaches collaboration, especially if you go through that process.
What you generally think about online education, remote education, and that trend?
Famous universities that have gotten into the online education world. A few years ago, they were doing these programs where they were actually videotaping professors giving lectures and then selling it online. And to me, that's a terrible way to use online education. Why? Because it's so passive. What if it's a terrible professor, and what if their lectures aren't good and interesting?
Skip it.
Skip it, sure, but then you've got to go through all that. I just don't think that that's a good use.
What is the alternative?
So there's a couple of alternates that I would say, and I actually developed one when I was at LinkedIn called Conscious Business, and it was about how do you put into practice the learning and values at LinkedIn to your day-to-day life. So what it is it starts off with actually some videos for the knowledge part. So we say, okay, first of all, you got to start with a group. You're putting a group together, which we call a cohort, and it may be like 20 people. So they're interacting online. So they're introduced online, they have a chat room online, and they're going through this together. But it's asynchronous at the very beginning. They watch the video and then they're asked to do something. So they actually go out and they have a real issue that they have to go out and give somebody feedback, and then they come back to the group and they talk about as a group online what their experience was. So they're sharing their experience there. At the end of the week, they do a video chat with a facilitator that synthesizes all the information online, so that they actually have a conclusion about that topic at the end of the week. Think about how much better that is than just a lecture online.
Last two questions. The most practical advices for two types of people. First, the leader of organization. What are the three things to be done to build a proper learning culture?
If I had 3 pieces of advice to give to a manager, I would say, let your employees have some autonomy about what, where, and why they're learning some things. Because the old model says... Autonomy. The old model says, I'm going to control what you learn, when you learn, and how you learn it, and then they wonder why people aren't excited about it. The second piece of advice I would give to managers is have conversations with your employees, have career conversations. How many managers actually sit down with their employees and say, what do you want to do with your career? What do you want to do with your life? How are you doing in your job? Like, have a normal human conversation with people, and then give them some guidance about what you think maybe, that they could be doing, or listen to what they want to do. So I think
trying to build their career strategy together, even if it's not inside your company.
Yeah, and it can be more informal, right? It doesn't have to be a career, like so formal. It's like
career meeting review. Yeah.
Right, because I think that's so intimidating.
Third thing for the leader.
The third thing, is always ask your employee to come up with some sort of goal, learning goal, because having the conversations can be sometimes kind of broad, and although you want to give your employee autonomy, it would be great. It's always great to have a goal to strive for. So, like, for example, you said you really wanted to get better at presentation and you wanted experience presenting in front of the executive team. I'm going to give you that opportunity, but how's it going as you're preparing for that? Like, check in on the goal.
How to develop yourself to be prepared for the future.
The other thing I would say for employees that I think is really important is, I think, maybe change your mindset about what it means to grow and develop in your career. And what I mean by that is that a lot of employees think that if they're not getting promoted, that they're not learning and growing. And I had several conversations with employees at LinkedIn where they were especially with 70% millennials, they'd be on their job for like 3 or 6 months and they'd want to get a promotion, and like very aggressive in terms of trying to, figure out how to get to the next level. And then if I'd sit back and ask them, so since you joined LinkedIn, what did you start doing? And did your responsibilities grow? Did you start having a team? Even though maybe they weren't promoted, when you ask them those types of questions, they realize, oh yeah, I guess it's a lot different from when I first started. I have been given more responsibility, and yes, I hired a few people and now I have a team when I didn't have one before. And so those are signs. So look for signals of how you're growing and developing and learning. And it's not necessarily about promotions, but about new experiences.
It was great meeting you.
Great meeting you too. I really enjoyed the conversation.
I hope so. I hope our YouTube audience will do it too.
So, hi, my name is Kelly Palmer, and create whatever.